Hi guys, it's me George, and I'm doing a video today, which in truth is actually a video and a topic that I have severely put off. It's actually something that I have not, I've actively ignored, because it's not necessarily something I want to associate my channel with. And what I want to talk about today is politics and witchcraft. And the reason why I've wanted to avoid it is because, understandably, in this world today, a lot of people are very angry from both sides, right and left. A lot of people are very, very angry, and there's a lot of loud voices. And I think that that's something that I don't necessarily would bring my channel any good. So I don't know if you've actually noticed, but a lot of the times in my channel personally, I've tried to remain as politically neutral as possible. And I'm probably going to sort of make the comments so that people can't comment under this, because I don't ultimately want my channel getting into a huge political debate, because I have seen a really, really ugly side with people that disagree with others' point of views from both sides, and I find it it's just too loud. There's not actual room for conversation, particularly with the internet. People get so angry. And as I've said, to a degree, I can understand that. That's not something that I'm removed from. That is something that I do understand. But I wanted to talk today about people saying how witchcraft is political. And I definitely agree with that statement, because I actually think that, and hear me out before I go into this, is I actually think if you look at history, a lot of witch trials, there was ultimately a fear with people that the witches would overthrow the king or queen. And back then in those times, the king or queen was basically a governor of God. God had ultimately given them power to rule the land. God had ultimately given them power, and what they said was God's word. They were so interconnectedly linked to God, much the same as in pharaohs in ancient Egypt. There was that kind of, they had that almost divine part about them. So it would make sense, seeing as the witch, a person of diabolica, a diabolical person that went the other way to everyone's views, would go against that, would go actively against the idea of the king or the queen or the country, and actively plot against them. In particular, there's a lot of interesting accounts with King James. And, in particular, we talk about, it's very interesting, the North Berwick witch trials, when there was the idea that the witches were trying to overthrow the ship that King James and his wife was on their first night of their wedding night and things like that. So there is actually, to a degree, of course, a link to witchcraft and politics, and ultimately witchcraft is the movement of the persecuted. It is the movement of the persecuted. Witchcraft ultimately was very much associated with women, and back then women were seen as second-class citizens, if not worse. And I think that that's something that's really, really important to remember. And I think that also the actual time, the attitudes, the ethics, the morals that people had were very, very different to this modern day and age. Like, this modern day and age, as much as there is problems with it, in comparison to way back when, the majority of the attitudes and beliefs and morals that people have are significantly more progressive. Am I saying that there aren't problems in the modern day? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not indicating that at all. But what I am saying is that way back when, attitudes were fucked up, excuse my French, but there was a lot of attitudes that were messed up. And I think that this is one of the things that when it comes to politics and when it comes to witchcraft, I definitely think it's important to recognise that there is, to a degree, a political element to the witch, to the archetype of the witch. The witch was somebody that didn't fit in. The witch was an outsider. They actively didn't fit in, and all the people that were outshunned by the rest of society, all the people that were marginalised, were seen sometimes as witches. Also, Cecil Williamson actually believed that the idea of the Sabbath was basically bullshit that was made up by the Christian church in order to demonise the Jewish Shabbat, the Friday night feast that Jews would have, and that Jews still have. And, it's kind of interesting. So there is, to a degree, a political element of witchcraft. However, and I think this is something that for me is really, really interesting, and also, to be completely honest with you, frustrating as somebody that values history, as somebody that values not writing over history, actually seeing history for what it is. There is an idea that is beginning to occur, and I've seen it from a lot of people, this idea that is basically aligning witches way back when with certain political movements now. And I can stand there and see certain resemblances to it. That's not to say I can't see that there is a line between that, but you have to remember that those times were very, very different. Very, very different. If I went to a accused witch, 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying all the time, but 9 times out of 10, in that day and age, the mentality people had, it was like, oh, this is my boyfriend, or this is a guy I'm seeing. They would have a very, 9 times out of 10, wouldn't probably have a very positive reaction to that. I don't think. I'm honestly almost certain that I don't think they'd have that reaction to that. Do I actually think that mindset and mind frame is correct? Of course I don't. Of course I don't. But my point is that you have to remember the time that this was. This was a time where people actually believed that people physically took their skin off, flew through the air, and ate fucking babies. Like, this is a time where people believed in, you know, the physical, the physicality of the witch. You know, this you have to remember, this is a time that is very, very different, that was ruled ultimately by the church, where typically men had the high rank, and then anything below that was just you know. So this was a really, really different time from now. And once again, I keep going back to this, but am I suggesting that there aren't problems now in the modern day world? No. I'm not suggesting, but I'm saying it was a very different time from what it is now. I've also seen, worryingly and alarmingly, people that are talking about ancient Celts that had this queer community, and I fucking hate that word. I'm not even gonna lie. I can't stand that word. But, you know, this kind of idea of a queer community within ancient Celts, and there are rumours, you know, about sort of Celtic warriors having sex together, but no one really knows how accurate that is. The Celts did not write. They did not write. Anything about the Celts was taken down by the Romans, which then you have to actually think, is that correct what they're saying, or are they ultimately trying to demonise a tribe of people in a land that they are invading? No one knows. And for me, I find problems in that in the idea of people trying to change or alter history to suit their political needs at the moment. And that to me is a big problem. Does it mean that I therefore disagree with what those people are ultimately trying to want for society? No, of course not. But it just means that I appreciate history for what it is. And I think ultimately this is something that's really, really important. We can't start to change history because of our political ideologies. And I don't find that healthy. I find that quite damaging. I find that quite frightening. The idea of trying to rewrite history. History is history, and history is history because we can learn from it. We can ultimately be better as a society. We can be better as people from it. And I think that this is something I've seen that is quite worrying. The idea of people trying to align, which is way back when, with some of people's current day political views or ideologies, and it was a very different time back then. I keep saying that, but it is the truth. It was a very, very different time back then. Of course, I definitely believe that the witch represents someone that is marginalised in society. I am not trying to cut that comparison, but what I am saying is the attitudes, the beliefs and the ideologies way back when, if we're talking about witch persecutions, because particularly when we talk about witchcraft and politics, persecution is something that comes up massively. The other idea, the other aspect, and this is going to be really, really unpopular, and I am definitely taking the comments off, and please watch this video before you just log off. Like, please, like, watch all of this video, is that most witches or magical practitioners typically tend to be left wing or left leaning. However, one of the things I have seen is there is a bit of a a shud or a kind of this doesn't exist, let's brush it under the carpet for witches that are actually right-leaning. And actually I have friends that are witches and are magical practitioners that are right-leaning. I've also seen people that are saying you can't do this if you're a witch, or you can't believe in this if you're a witch. But at the same time, I then see memes and sort of things and statuses from people saying, you shouldn't say, sorry, there's like sirens going off. I am in Scotland. Only joking. Love it. But, there is ultimately, I see these statuses from other people, particularly online, that say, don't tell me how to be a real witch. But then in the same breath, they'll then say to people, well, if you believe in this politically, then you aren't a witch. And it's a little bit pot kettle black. In the sense that the witch typically didn't have rules. The idea of the witch is the witch lived by chaos. The witch lived to her own rules. She went her way. Don't tell a witch what to do. The witch does her own thing. Do you know what I mean? Do you see where I'm coming from? I am not right-wing. I am definitely mid-wing in terms of politically. Not that that's kind of relevant, but I'd say I'm left-leaning, but I'm definitely mid-wing. I can see things from the right side that has good attributes to it. I can see things from the left that has good attributes from it. I can see things from the right side that has bad attributes to it. I can see things from the left that has bad attributes to it. So I'm very, very mid-wing, but ultimately I would say I'm definitely a little bit more left-leaning. And this is the thing, I feel like I can understand why people are angry. I can see and appreciate why people are angry. And a lot of people tend to get very passionate and very heated, which is why I'm taking these comments off. I love a political debate as well as the next person, and I do, but I love a healthy political debate. If you were to put me in a room with my friends and you were to put the political parties we voted, they would be so varied in terms of left to right. I don't necessarily have people that, I don't limit myself to people that have only my political views, because for me personally, as a human being, I actually enjoy debating with people that have different points of view from me, because for me, it shows security within my own political beliefs. And please do not put a picture of the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi fascist party. Like, don't put that shit on my half Jewish ass. Like, let's be honest here. Jesus, it is kicking off outside. But like, the point is, don't say, well, these have different opinions, won't you talk to them? Come on, guys, let's be realistic. Like, there is a level. Do you know what I mean? There is a level, okay? Of course, I'm not going to speak to somebody that wants people of colour dead. I'm not going to associate with that, because for me, racism has no fucking place in my life. And I think a lot of people are very quick to jump onto, well, if you do this, you're as bad as this. And I don't necessarily think it is as black and white as what people make out. I think the world is a spectrum of colour. I think people's views are a spectrum of colour, and I find it quite unhealthy to be very black and white, particularly within people that may follow a spirituality that isn't black and white, that actively says the world is grey. So there is a huge difference between me having friends who are Tories and me having a friend who is a fucking Nazi. That wouldn't happen in the world of George. Like, it wouldn't happen. And I think people are very quick to throw that out there, but I don't necessarily think it's always about that. I might put this video on, I might not, because to be honest, people get very, very easily offended. People get very easily triggered about things. People are very quick to jump down other people's throats. This, by the way, doesn't mean that I am targeting right or left. It doesn't mean that. What it means is ultimately I see these patterns and behaviours in both sides of the spectrum, and I don't necessarily find them healthy, because people are in a room and everyone's shouting, no one can hear each other. So that to me isn't something that I necessarily am about. I'm not about that life. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to do this video because I think it's controversial. It's completely controversial, and I may lose subscribers. I may lose viewers. And you know what? That's fine. but I can't ignore the question anymore. And this will be the this is the first political video and the last political video that is on my channel due to keeping things neutral. Once again, the people that I have as my friends, some that are Green Party, some that are Conservative Party, some that are Labour, some that are Lib Dems, for me, it's not an issue. We will have views, me and my friends, that we both fundamentally agree with each other's view, but ultimately we're still able to sit down and be like, do you want a beer, mate? But like, yeah. And I love that. I love that because for me, I can learn something from them. They can learn something from me. It doesn't necessarily mean that we've changed our views, but what it means is I've gained more of a perspective on a side that I don't get. I still ultimately don't agree with their views, and they might ultimately not agree with mine, but it shows that for me, it shows that security, and it shows that I am able to have those talks, have those conversations with people without things blowing up. So yeah, I hope this video makes sense. If you want to unsubscribe from me now, go for it. But a lot of people have asked me this question and I can't really put it off anymore. Whether you are right or left or mid or fucking reverse upside down, I don't care. As long as you're not a dick, as long as you're a nice person and you don't want people to die, I'm all good. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, peace out, A-Town.